So now Hohenberger has fled, and we're going to begin this episode with him already have fled Louisiana because there is, as you can see here, a bulletin that goes out that the suspect is wanted for kidnapping, forcible rape, oral copulation. Those are all charges from California. Those are not charges here in Louisiana or there in Louisiana. I act like I'm there. They're from Indio Municipal Court. That's where he fled. Now, what they did also in Louisiana was to charge him with the theft of a rifle, which is a felony. So they have another felony warrant on him there. That's more of a chess piece move, meaning you want him for the murders, but you may not have just enough yet to time that, but you want to get him off the streets. Yes, you have those California warrants, but, let's have a felony warrant here in Louisiana on him as well. And that's what they did. So Hohenberger flees. Nobody knows where he's at. He actually flees on 16th of May, 1978. So if we go back to our timeline, on May 11th was his last known abduction and murder of Gold, whose body was never recovered, and Adams, whose body is recovered. So I want to talk a little bit before we get to Hohenberger, where he ends up, about the body recovery and how I went into it a little bit in the last video. Police, it appears that they've gone back to R&M a second time. And it's during this second visit that they get the odor, a bad odor. They don't know what it is. Or maybe one of them did. If you ever been to scenes of dead bodies, I have. There's a certain smell, and you kind of recognize it right away. So I'm sure that they probably knew what it was, but they checked the septic system, because I don't know if they checked a lot of other places before then or not, but they checked the septic system. And the septic system, you can see it here. To my understanding, it is just two 55-gallon oil drums, a homemade septic system. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with homemade septic systems. I'm not too familiar, but I have built one for camp at one point in time, where I used a 55-gallon drum, not two of them, but one. And this is, you have your sludge that goes into it, and you surround it by stone. You let the water leach out, kind of like a sand mound system, and the sludge and everything else is kept in the barrel. You get the barrel pumped out. That's a septic system. From the pictures, I can assume this is kind of like the same thing that I just described. So it's not very big, but they pull off the top and they saw a foot protruding. Now, again, 255 barrel drums. I'm envisioning them one on top of another. And yeah, would be about right for a foot to be sticking out of there, because it's very hard to fully encase two human bodies into that. And that's what he did. Now, the order of these two bodies is very important. And I've been told, and I don't know this for a fact, that Bridget Son's body was on top of Judy Adams. If that is true, we have another mystery. How does that occur? There's no way it could shift in that 55-gallon drum. It's not possible. And it would make no sense that he would pull out Bridget's body completely after it's already in there and put Adam's body in there and then Bridget's back on top. For what purpose? It serves no purpose. So if that's the case, and I don't want to dwell on this too much because I don't know if that is true, but if it is the case, you have to take into consideration that Bridget's sons was either buried somewhere else or was somewhere else, and he moved it because he found a better spot. That's the only way that makes sense to me. Okay, I've killed Bridget. I've put her wherever in the sand over here from all the sandblasting that they had. I'm going to bury her there. He kills Gold and Adams. He puts Adams in the septic system and says, oh, that's a pretty good spot. I'm not so sure about this spot where I have Bridget. Let me put her there. Not saying that happened, folks, but I'm just saying that makes sense to me if the bodies were aligned like that. Now, as I covered in the previous video, it must have been a shock to them to pull those bodies out and discover that one of them is Bridget. You know, if they pull the first one out and they realize that it's Adam's, then the next one they see, they've got to assume that it's Gold. And when they say, whoa, it's not, it's odd. Again, odd is a bad choice of word. It's not expected. How's that? So when they pull them up from, now I haven't seen any photographs or anything like that, but I'm going from the newspaper accounts that they were bound and gagged. Now, I'm not surprised because that appears to me to be what gets him off, is the binding and the gagging and the kidnapping, the control. Again, I've heard that both bodies were clothed. I don't know what to make of that other than it's possible that he did not physically sexually assault them if they were clothed. Because I have a hard time believing that he would sexually assault them, allow them to get dressed, and then kill them. Because there's no reason to allow them to get dressed if you're going to kill them right then and there. But, hey, listen, the state of dress, if they were fully clothed, if they just had their shirts on, if they just had and no bra, those are things that would make my assessment a little bit more clear. Since I don't know that, I don't want to say for sure, but I'm just giving possibilities for that. It's very possible that since they were bound and or gagged and clothed, if they were, that he held them like that in his room and masturbated to it. Okay? That does not surprise me. It would not surprise me at all if they were clothed. Remember, he has a hard time getting an erection with just sexual assault, just intercourse, I should say. But it appears that when he binds and gags them, he doesn't have much of a problem then. So you could speculate 100 times on this. And I don't know. I would have to see the pictures of how they were clothed and the bindings. I'm very curious about the bindings. Him being impulsive, and he's displayed that. I would expect the bindings to be manic, meaning meaning they a lot of bindings, and a lot of bindings maybe that don't make sense, meaning a mismatch of bindings, wire, rope, chain, whatever it is. That's what I would expect to see with these victims. I guess we have to talk about the non-body of gold. I mean, we could say Roderman too. Yeah, because I think I'm comfortable saying that he kidnapped Mary Lee Roderman, even though the ransom thing is totally against what he has ever done. It doesn't mean that he couldn't do it. And it's not like it's far-fetched from him. Okay? He's predictable in patterns, but he's unpredictable as his life is unraveling, if that makes sense. With him not going back to jail, it seems like he's taking more risks than he normally did or normally would, and that seems counterintuitive. But I think it's just the unraveling of a man who's on the run, basically. So they discover the bodies. Mary Roderman, of course, we know is never found, nor is Bertha Gold. I'm a man and an investigator who believes the most simple answer is the answer. So, to me, you are surrounded by water. That's where you would put Roderman, and that's where you would put Gold. But guess what? If that was the answer, then why wasn't Mark Canella's body there? Why wasn't Bridget Sund's body there? And why wasn't Judy Adams' body there? So I don't know. But it appears that he's not putting bodies in the same locations. Yeah, you could say Bridget and Adam's body is in the same location. But if Bridget's on top, she was somewhere else. And if that is the case, you have 3 bodies at 3 different locations. So that tells me that, listen, he's not comfortable with where he's putting the bodies. Ted Bundy used a certain area. I want to say Mount Rainier, but that could be wrong. But there was an area that he used, that he dumped bodies. Joe Naso did at least 2 on Mount Tam because he was comfortable. It worked for him. So it tells me, one, he was scared of using that water for whatever reason to dispose of bodies. He didn't want that. It's right out his back porch, basically. But instead he puts it in that septic system. He puts 2 in there because that's all that could fit. I'm guessing that if it was a larger septic system, you would have found gold there as well. Roderman, I'm not so sure. But you would have found gold there. So he could only fit 2 in there. He's got to find another place for gold. Now, where that is, it's been 50 years and she hasn't been found. And that's amazing to me because I feel like she would be in that area somewhere. He didn't like to go far with bodies. Canella's body was only 4 miles or so from there, so it's got to be there. And he didn't bury him. There's no indication that he ever buried anybody. I think you would have seen that with Mark's body. We don't. So I would safely assume that Bertha Gold's body is not buried. It was placed somewhere. And it not being found, even though they had divers and everything in there, I would say that, man, the simplest answer is that water. what is it, the Tesh? I don't even know if that's correct, but the water that was right out back. So the discovery of the bodies, everything is chaos. Frank Green, a.k.a. Robert Hoenberger, leaves on May 16th. His whereabouts are unknown until May 31st. So there's 15 days that no one knows where he's at. Could there potentially be other victims in there? For sure. On May 31st, it's discovered he was in Tacoma, Washington. While en route to Washington, Hohenberger telephoned Sidney, remember, his possible accomplice, and certainly a friend of his that's tipping him off. Sidney's been advised by authorities that Hohenberger was wanted in connection with the kidnappings. Sidney warned Hohenberger that the police were looking for him and about the events that occurred. So, on May 31st, 1978, at approximately noon in Tacoma, Washington, police were investigating a suspicious vehicle that was for sale. The vehicle matched the description of the vehicle wanted by authorities in Louisiana. Officers located Hohenberger and placed him under arrest, and a struggle followed. In the ensuing struggle, Hohenberger drew a weapon, which discharged, resulting in a gunshot wound to the side of Hohenberger's head. The weapon, a .22 caliber revolver, was registered to Linda, his sister, from California. Hohenberger was taken to St. Joseph's Hospital, where he died at approximately 6:50 on May 31st, 1978. At no time did Hohenberger regain consciousness or utter any statement. Sidney was later arrested and charged with accessory after the fact. He was convicted, served his time in St. Mary's Parish, and that's all we know about Mr. Sidney. Now, in that report, they kind of glanced over, and I think they give the police too much credit for Hohenberger's arrest, because the actual thing that took place was this. There was an off-duty police officer who was looking in Tacoma, Washington, looking for a second-hand vehicle, something cheap. He read Hohenberger's ad that he had placed because he was trying to sell his car. Why? Because the car's wanted. It's connected to him for these murders. He wants to get rid of it. He places an ad. Hey, cheap car, $400, whatever it is. Well, this police officer answers the ad. He calls him. Hey, can I come look at it? Yes, come look at it. He has no idea that the guy's wanted for murder. He knows nothing about this. He gets there. He looks at the car. He notices the Louisiana plates. And he's like any good cop was, let me check out this car. You know what I mean? Let's just check it out and run the plates. He runs it, finds out, boom, 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 boom. All these bells and whistle goes off. This car is wanted in connection with murders in Louisiana, rapes in California. He's like, oh, shit. Okay. Well, let me get 4 plainclothes officers, and I'll go make contact with him, get him out of his apartment. That's important because you don't want a barricaded gunman. Get him down, and we'll arrest him. On the ruse, the cops now are using a ruse of buying the car, which it began with a legitimate thought of buying the car. Police officer goes up, knocks on Hohenberger's apartment. Hey, I'm here to look at the car. Yeah, okay, come down. Walking down. The signal to place the arrest is the undercover officer's placing his hand on his head. Signals like that is normal. I worked undercover for 8 years, I think. So you always have a signal, no matter what it's going to be, to affect the arrest for everybody to converge. Do that. They all converge. There's a struggle. Hohenberger somehow is able to get the .22 revolver out of his pants, wherever he had it, get it to his head, and shoot himself. While he's in the hospital, he didn't die right away, and while he's in the hospital, there's a police officer assigned to him continually, trying to get a dying declaration from him. And it's annotated in the police report, hey, at such and such time, I went and checked on him and tried to get him to answer questions. He was nonverbal, all the way until they did surgery on him. They removed the bullet. It did not exit his head, and he eventually succumbed to those injuries. Good to his word that he was not going back to prison. Thus, the life and crimes of Robert Carl Hoenberger, a.k.a. Frank Green, has come to an end. With 4 known victims, 5 possibly with Mary Roderman, and how many more are out there that we don't know about. Remember back in the very beginning of this, when he kidnapped the couple from Mount Tam, he said, I killed 17 people. Now, if we look at the patterns of Hoenberger, I would say that that is probably not true, because he let everybody go up until potentially Mary Roderman that we know about. But it doesn't mean he didn't. It certainly could be that, hey, I choose to kill this person. I choose to let this one go. But I would think that Hoenberger would be connected because he's not that great of a criminal, right? He's gotten caught multiple times. So it's not like he's a ghost in the wind and he's the most competent serial killer of all time. Again, he gets off on being able to take you from public, and he doesn't care if it's 1 or 2 of you. I'm surprised there isn't 3. But that's it for him. They search his car. They search his apartment looking for clues. They fingerprint for latent prints. His vehicle, they find, and I'm interested in this, they find latent prints in the back inside window that didn't belong to any of his victims. You know, I'm sure they checked them against his own. Just kind of curious as to who those belong to. And I think, to be honest with you, as much of a, people like to say monster that Hoenberger is, I think of such a wasted talent. Meaning, the coworker I talked to said he was good at everything. Jack of all trades. Could weld, do body work, kept the books for R&M. He did everything. He was good at everything. He wasn't a good serial killer, thank goodness, because we caught him. Good police work. Caught him. Those 2 boys who jotted down his license plate. Caught him. Okay? They deserve a ton of credit in this. But it's just, he could have been a much productive person. And he wasn't. Because he had this disease. He had this urge. And I'm making no excuses for him. Just like Ted Bundy, and the judge said to Ted Bundy when he sentenced him, you could have been a good lawyer, but you chose this route. That's how I feel about Hoenberger. He ruined many lives. Just think of the sexual assaults. The school teacher back on May 8th, 1966. And, the girls from Laguna Beach. And the girls from College of the Desert. They weren't murdered, thank goodness. But I promise you, they had trauma the rest of their life. Because of the acts. The selfish acts of Robert Hoenberger. Just because he has this urge A sociopath will say, I have no empathy for you. It's all about me. I'm going to quench this thirst at your expense. And that's what he did. And that's why I have no remorse for him, because of that. I can empathize with his disease, but that's as far as it goes, because you chose to hurt other people. And we didn't even get into the murder victims, and not only hurting them, but the ripple effects that did to the families, what that did to the community, and what that did to law enforcement that had to investigate it, who had to pull those two bodies out of that septic system. You think that's easy for them? No, absolutely not. But Hohenberger was very good at being a Jekyll and Hyde. I would have expected more evidence in his room. But when you're not stabbing anybody and the coroner says that it's a strangulation, what evidence are you going to have? You're not going to have any physical evidence. Hairs, that could tie Bridget to his room or whatever it is. But they didn't have to get any of that, so we'll never know. Because Hohenberger kills himself, he never has to go to trial. It's a open and shut case. But I still have questions. Like when I read the search warrant return, okay, you do a search warrant, and these are the things that you're looking for. But then whatever you take, you have to leave what's called a return inventory. These are the things that we took. And when I read Hohenberger's return, I saw spent .22 casings in his room. And I want to say they found 3 of them. What's he shooting his gun for inside his room? Is it to torture the bound Bridget Sons and the bound Bertha Gold and the bound Judy Adams? As far as we know, he doesn't torture people. He hasn't, any of the survivors, but they're survivors, right? He sexually assaulted them, but he didn't torture them. Did he progress and evolve so much as a serial killer that sexual assault didn't do it for him anymore, and he had to bound, gag, and torture? Certainly possible. Is he getting drunk in his room and shooting off his gun? I guess that's possible, but that doesn't make a lot of sense. So why is there spent casings? Especially, like I said, there was 3 spent casings, right, that I saw. And how many victims do we have? We have 5 victims, right? But 2 of them aren't found. We don't know where 2 of them are. So those 3 victims, does that match the 3 shell casings? Were they shot? That's what I would expect. But the coroner says no. And you got to believe the coroner. The skulls would show, obviously, if he shot him in the head, even with the .22. But they didn't. So what's he doing? What's he doing inside that room of his? That one little cot that he has. As I look at that picture of that cot, I can't help but think, were people assaulted and raped on that cot? Were they killed by strangulation on that cot? We'll never know. We'll never know. And that's the sad part. All we can do is, speculate and put out theories. But I think we can deduce a lot based on the evidence that we see. And it's a shame. It's a shame that he ruined so many people's lives, that 50 years later, it's still impacting people because they've reached out to me. Cindy Canella, obviously, and her parents. It's just a shame. The next episode that I want to talk about is going to be the last episode. And I want to talk about the possibility of Robert Hoenberger being the murderer of a famous case of Cheri Jo Bates, who is alleged by a lot of people to be a victim of the Zodiac killer. Again, I was privy to the Riverside police reports on Cheri Jo Bates. I tested evidence in Cheri Jo Bates' case at the lab that I established back in 2017. So I'm well versed, probably more than most people in the public are, about Cheri Jo Bates' case. And I did a video about her, and I think I'll link it to this video, so if you want, you can go watch it. And I gave my assessment of the case and what I think took place. And we'll see if Robert Hoenberger matches that assessment and whether he should strongly be considered as a suspect in that case as well. And we'll end the series on that. So I want to click into my folder I have on Hohenberger's trip to Tacoma. Oh, so why Tacoma, Washington? Why did he go there? Well, according to his coworker, he knew exactly why he was there. He said he was on his way to Alaska. Now, we don't know whether that's true or not, but he said he always talked about two places: the desert and Alaska. So maybe he was on his way to Alaska. But I want to go to this folder I have of Tacoma, Washington, and see if I went over everything that I want to. Okay. Here, let's see if there's a photograph. Just items in his wallet when he was found dead. A gas receipt. He was using a R&M's credit cards. The police knew this, and this is again, another smart move by the police. Is they knew he was going to be short on cash more than likely when he fled, but he fled with those credit cards, so they put flags on those cards if they were used to know his whereabouts. I like that. His property inventory. Yes, I want to go into this quick before I end this, because the reason I saved this snapshot of his search warrant inventory is because I'm very intrigued by this. And you'll see why in the next video as well. He had a Timex wristwatch on at the time of his death. Black face, yellow and white gold band. But scratched on the back of that watch was the numbers 8349. What is that? That bothers me. Okay? I don't like loose ends. That bothers me. What is that? What is this? The last four of his social, the last four of a phone number, or is it the birth date of one of his victims? You know what I mean? Or it has nothing to do with anything. But with a serial killer, you have to follow up every little detail. So when I saw that, I'm intrigued. He had a pocket knife on him. These are all things that was on his person when he shot himself and was arrested. 49 cents. Matches, numbers to a yellow cab company. They took hair samples from him too, but it's neither there nor there. This is something else that I'm going to look up as soon as I'm done here, because I didn't get a chance to do it yet. They also did a search warrant, obviously, on his apartment. What does he have with him? It says they secured a portion of the May 25th Times-Picayune newspaper. Why does he have that? What's he looking at? I got to try to find that out, and I'm going to look that up when we get off of here, because I haven't done it yet. But I have it highlighted because it was something that I wanted to check out. He had a medicine bottle from Herbert's drugstore. The wristwatch we talked about. His car. So I guess that's it for that. That's everything that I wanted to cover. His sunglasses are going to be of somewhat importance to me in this next video as well, and I'll explain to you why that is. Sometimes when police confiscate things, they don't know the importance of things. They don't connect the dots. But I see something, and when I see something, I like to follow up on it, obviously. So his sunglasses and a particular detail about them that I have to follow up on, and I will tell you what that is in the next video about Cheri Jo Bates. With that said, that's it. Hoenberger's life is over. His crimes are over in Louisiana, but I'm betting there's still some out there, including this one I'm going to talk about on the next episode. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. Mains out. Hey, I would like to introduce to you my new book. It's not exactly new, but it's a new edition. Second edition of Unsolved No More. This was my first book that I've ever written, and it is a autobiography, but it also has cases in there that I've looked at. It tells you how I became who I am, my background, my history, my influences, but it also gives some cases in there of cases that I've worked. Now, for the people that have already read it, there's updates to all these cases. And because it's been almost 10 years since I wrote this book. So second edition is now available with updates. It's available at my website, kenmains.com, or off of Amazon. So go order Unsolved No More, the book that started it all.